that, I will now call the meeting to order, and I will ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance with me, and I'll stand and try to maneuver this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Now, as you see in front of you, there's this little housekeeping for the webinar, and we've basically gone through most of it. We're going to address the public comments. However, you will need to raise your hand so to be allowed to then participate. And if you're on your phone, I believe to unmute, it's *6, so that you will be able to then be allowed to present. And if you, in all the public comments for items that are not on the agenda, you will have 3 minutes. And then when we get to the agenda items, we will go in order and ask as appropriate. Next slide, please. Oh, did I cover everything? Okay. And if you see, you can see on the arrow is pointing to the committee action. As you can see, I will call for a vote. I will ask you to raise your hand to make a motion, and then to raise a hand, recognize you to second it. And then I will, rather than going by, there's a terrible background noise. Anyway, then I will ask for anyone that might oppose the motion, rather than to go by every single person for an affirmative action. And then we will, if you are participating by phone only, you'll have to please unmute your phone for the administrator to recognize you. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
This is Scott Boyce from Lake Forest. Have you done roll?
I have not done roll. I'm going to ask, since I cannot seem to get this, I will ask Jenna or someone that's working their magic to just go through our roll and ask for everyone, as their name is called, to unmute and announce that they are there.
Maria will walk through roll.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria.
Okay. Megan U. Schneider.
Present.
Bill Moorhead.
Here.
Brad McGeer.
Here.
Dave Wheeler.
Here.
Doug Erdman.
Here.
Ed Mandick.
I'm here.
Sandra Jacobs.
Here.
Karen McLaughlin.
I'm here.
Kay Havens.
Here.
Kelly Jennings.
Here.
Mike Frost.
Here.
Deborah Neef.
Here.
Did I miss anyone?
Scott
Yes.
Boyce, Lake Forest.
I'm sorry.
Scott Boyce, Lake Forest.
Okay, thank you.
And Norris Brandt on behalf of Derek Reeve for San Juan Basin Authority.
Okay, thank you.
Rick Erkeneff, South Orange County Wastewater Authority.
Okay, thank you.
Bill Green, South Coast Water District.
Thank you.
Sean Pelletier, Lisa Viejo for Tiffany Ackley.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Steve Deshawn, South Coast Water District.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else? If not, I also have a note here to that certainly committee members, if you have any questions whatsoever, there's also an option that you can use the chat room. We would prefer certainly that the committee members raise their hand, but you can certainly use the chat room if you prefer.
Debbie, this is Debbie Burnett. Just to let you know, I'm on the call for South Orange County Wastewater.
Thank you. Thank you. And if there's anyone else from the public who would like to be on the record, you can certainly unmute, and I'll ask for anyone else that would like to announce themselves. It's so much more difficult via this virtual setting than to go around the room. I certainly miss that. But if there's anyone else that would like to, for the record, announce that they're here from the public, please do so now. Raise your hand. And I see Mike Newman and Ginger Wallace, our guests, that they have raised their hands.
Thank you.
For the record, yes, they are here. Is there any, and Rich Schlesinger is a guest. And I see one other with that. I'm not sure who that might be. Is there anyone else that would like to, for the record, announce that they are here? Oh, Betty Olson, welcome. And one
Thank
other. You. And Devin Slavin with 2 guests. Thank you. Anyone else would like to be recognized? Let's see. Okay, I think that covers most all of our housekeeping. So we will now move to the public comment for non-agendized items. If there's anyone that would like to speak, please raise your hand. And Mike Beenan and Ginger Wallace have their hands raised. I will recognize you, Mike and Ginger.
Yes, good afternoon. Mike Beenan, Laguna Blue Belt Coalition. I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for working together to reduce the flows in Aliso Creek. And also to thank the county and Moult-McDowell Water District for their leadership on this effort, working with non-government organizations. This is an important first step to restore the Aliso estuary and protect the beach sand berm, which allows full public access of the beach areas. Improving the creek and protecting the sand berm also improves water quality at Aliso Beach and our state marine protected areas while helping the kelp forest recover. Finally, this is a good reminder that working together works. So thanks again for everyone's effort.
Thank you, Mike. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? Oh, come on, don't be shy. Okay. Okay, fantastic. We will close the public comment now, and we will move to item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. And I will ask for a motion. I'm sorry to say that the last time we were all together was August 6th, guys, And I see Sandra Jacobs has her hand raised.
I will move approval of the minutes from August 6th. Thank you, Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District.
Thank you. And I see Ed Mandich has his hand raised.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. I will assume all are in favor. If you have, I know that we do have several new members that would be potentially abstaining. If you are abstaining, if you could please add that to the chat room or send an email so that we can get that on the record appropriately. And if there's anyone opposed, please raise your hand now. I see no opposition. So once again, just for if you were not at that meeting, please email Maria so that we can be sure and we get that recorded appropriately. Okay, we can move to item number 4 now, which are the 2021 meeting dates. I'll let our slides catch up with us. Okay, so we have, and I am very confident that we will definitely be meeting this year. We have a lot of stuff ahead of us. So I'm going to ask we have proposed the meeting dates for 2021 as May 6th, August 5th, and November 4th is the following 3 dates for this year. And I would like a motion to approve those dates. And I see Sandra Jacobs has raised her hand.
Thanks. I think Dave was first, but Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District. I'll move the item.
Okay. And Dave, you want to raise your hand? I'll recognize you.
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you. Okay. And I will ask all in favor. If there's anyone opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like motion is carried. So we will have those meetings set in stone now. And move to item number 5. Item number 5 is it's time again to ask for a slate. I'd like to ask for a nominating committee volunteers. We will, as you know, we usually rotate. There's a district and then a city, and then a district and a city back and forth to be held for 2-year terms. And my term is coming to an end. And so I would like 3 or 4 volunteers to join me as a nominating committee to select a potential nomination for chair and for vice chair. And you see before you the responsibilities of the chair and the process that we will go through. I'll just run through that. Certainly, we have our quarterly committee meetings. There are also ad hoc committees and you'll see in our EO report some terrific things that we are involved in that there may be a requirement for you to join that. And what happens is we will create this nominating committee now, and then the term will begin in July 1st. We will submit the slate. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling here. We will submit the slate at the May meeting, and then the term will begin in July. So I saw that Sandra Jacobs has volunteered. So we have 1 guinea pig. Thank you, Sandra, and Betty Burnett. Great.
Volunteer again. Well, this is Megan Schneider.
And Megan, great. Okay. So I have my committee. Thank you, ladies. That will be fantastic. So it'll be Megan. If you can make a note then, Maria, Megan, Betty, and Sandra. And I'm making my own notes here. Fantastic. Okay, moving right along, we will go to item, let's see, item number 5, item number 6. Thank you. I have my iPad, I have my other computer here. Okay, item number 6. Yes.
Hi, this is Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District.
Yes.
I appreciate the detailed budget in the agenda today. I was wondering, there were some items in the executive officer report that might better help me understand some of the budget items. So I was wondering if the committee was so inclined, if we could have the executive officer report now before we discuss the budget. I think it would be beneficial for especially the new members. Thank you.
You know, I do not have a problem with that at all. I do recognize that we have quite a few new members, and that might help set that stage. So I will take that as a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second it. It's Betty.
Okay, Betty, great. Okay, well, why don't we do that? Okay, all you amazing people behind the scenes that have this great slideshow, let's just step it on up, and I'll tee up Amanda.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just wait for the slides to be advanced.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. So starting off, I'd like to wish us all a happy 10th anniversary. Our 10th anniversary for the South Orange County IRWM cooperative agreement was this past December. We had flagged this pre-COVID as being, hey, we're going to do something great to recognize everything. And then we all know what has happened. So fun fact, this is our tin anniversary for its durability to show that we have lasted this long. So I have been talking with staff. You know, we really do want to make sure that we highlight and recognize the accomplishments of our group over the last 10 years. So what we are planning on doing is at the November meeting of this year, over the next 6 months or so, we're going to work with all of our member agencies to pull together you know, a really good retrospective of everything that we've done, both within the grant program as well as, you know, the cooperative projects that we have put on outside of our grants. So executive committee members, please give your management committee member a nice little nudge and make sure that you, you know, we're all participating and bringing all of our information to the table, but we'll be working over the next couple of months and then come with a retrospective in November to really highlight all the work that the group has done. So happy anniversary, everyone. I wish we were sharing a glass of something bubbly, but instead we'll have to do it virtually right now. A couple of other regulatory related items just to bring to your attention. The biological objectives basin plan amendment was adopted by the San Diego Regional Board at their December meeting. I know a lot of interested agencies were tracking this and participated. The next step in this process is this basin plan amendment will be taken to the state board and heard at the state board level. We're still waiting to see what the schedule is for that process. But just in case you missed that that activity at the regional board beginning of December, to wrap up the end of December, the San Diego board issued an investigative order regarding the Aliso Beach and breaching of the sand berm at the mouth of Aliso Creek. This was issued to the county, both to Orange County Public Works and to Orange County Parks. And it asked for us to submit a report summarizing the requested information by March 1st. That was submitted on March 1st and is available on our South Orange County Clearinghouse website. And we can also forward the link to that to folks if they are interested, but it is on our Clearinghouse website. So if you go forward on the next slide, please.
Sorry, Amanda, just so you know, I'm trying to advance and for some reason it keeps freezing. So
It looks like it is now. Yes.
Yeah, but if I have to pop out of presentation mode, I just wanted to let you know that's why I keep doing that.
That's why it's looking awkward. Yes.
Yes, and I apologize, but this is better than being frozen.
Yes.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Continuing along in chronological order, the South Orange County WQIP Implementation Annual Report was submitted on February 1st. And we have a story map. I mean, that is a rather voluminous report. We have a story map summarizing it available on the WQIP website. But again, that document is available on our Document Clearinghouse webpage. I was invited next, and also at the beginning of February, I was invited by US EPA to participate in a national webinar that they hosted along with the Water Reuse Organization, featuring on stormwater capture drivers, impediments, and future visions. And really, it was a collection of folks from across the country talking about various options for stormwater capture, and I was invited to participate on this based on the cooperative diversions that we have with Orange County Sanitation District, as well as the diversions that a lot of stormwater permittees have collectively done with their water districts and sanitation districts throughout the county. And sort of as a follow on from that, Dave Smith and I have been having some additional conversations. EPA is very interested to hear from stormwater agencies as well as sanitation districts and other water districts who are looking at stormwater capture projects. He's interested in hearing about, are there regulatory or other impediments to these sort of projects, and what potentially EPA could do to help facilitate those things. So if anybody is interested in I have a pretty good relationship with Dave, and I am perfectly happy to set up some phone calls if anyone would like to sort of have EPA's ear on this issue. So just go ahead and reach out to me, and I can make those connections. We have had this type of conversation with Dave, and actually Felicia Marcus is doing work on this with Orange County Sanitation District. So we had about an hour-long conversation on sort of what our viewpoints are on what are the pros and cons, and potentially how things could be facilitated. Additionally, on the regulatory front, the final dry weather compliance deadline for the San Diego Region Beaches and Creeks TMDL is coming up this April. The board is considering issuing a time schedule order because not all locations are currently meeting the requirements for the final compliance deadline, and a time schedule order is the mechanism to allow for a brief extension of that final compliance deadline within a pretty structured parameter of additional work. So that has been a draft of that has been posted by the San Diego board. The stormwater permittees have been meeting amongst themselves as well as with the regional board to discuss issues. And public comments are on this draft time schedule order are due on March 12th. Can you move the next slide, Jenna?
Yes and no. But
Yeah. Yes, it's there.
All right, I'll read. Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Also this week, it's been a busy week this week. California Department of Fish and Wildlife permitting specialists gave an overview of existing and new restoration permit options and case studies to support future restoration projects. And so they held a workshop called Cutting the Green Tape. So if you were not aware of that, hopefully they will have posted a recording of that workshop. And then to give sort of an overview of the grant programs that are administered on your behalf, the Prop 1 Round 1 final DWR agreement came in March for implementation agreements. Boy, sorry, Jenna, can you clarify that first bullet? Oh, and then we're expecting our implementation agreements in next month.
yes, so the final agreement will be done this month, because that's our goal. And then implementation agreements, and those are the agreements between the County of Orange and the project proponents. Follow that. We need the final DWR agreement first.
And additionally, draft funding recommendations have been released for the Prop 1 Stormwater Grant Round 2, and included in that was $6 million for Santa Margarita Water District's Upper San Juan Creek Stormwater Capture, Infiltration, and Potable Reuse Project. And additionally, we also we are expecting recertification of the Orange County Stormwater Resource Plan, or OC SWRP, imminently. We've been working back and forth with DWR to make sure that they have all of the documentation and documents that support that plan. But we're expecting final recertification of that any day now. And then I think there's one more slide, Jenna. Yes, and bringing up the last item, the Aliso Creek Watershed Project Collaboration Group. This is the group that has been working on trying to come up with a series of collaborative projects and a collaborative plan for the Aliso Creek Watershed. And to sort of come up with a process to take the place of what had been the Army Corps process for looking at the lower 6 miles of the creek. As you know, as with most of our in-person meetings, those meetings have been on hold through the pandemic protocols. Our next meeting is planned for late April. And the Aliso Creek reference guide has been posted for public review. And then we're also anticipating having an alternative analysis for potential projects for the lower 6 miles finalized in late spring as well. So, Madam Chair, that wraps up my executive officer's report. Hopefully some of this provides some context for the budget discussion, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. I know this is quite a mouthful, and I can say that I've been very active in Aliso Creek Watershed Project, and I'll speak a little more to that afterwards as well. We do have a couple of hands raised. I see Betty Burnett and Sandra Jacobs. You're following Betty, and then just continue to raise your hands, and I'll make a note and continue to recognize you. So Betty, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Nice report. Very much appreciate hearing that. in it just as a kind of a tie to the items that Amanda just covered on, I guess it's slide 45, 46, 47, and 48. In the budget, you've got line item number 6, regional project development, 72,500 for 21-22, and then 22-23, 85,000. Amanda, of the projects that you just went over, what portion of those dollars are feeding into those project lists that you just highlighted in the county's involvement in?
Jenna, I will ask you to highlight those items, but the items that I just went through weren't necessarily specific projects except for the Aliso, the facilitation of the Aliso Watershed group.
So the watershed, the Aliso Watershed project is within the dollars that are in those items 6 and 14, as you understand it?
No, we do not have a specific Aliso Creek project included in these dollars. No, what I'm talking about is some of the facilitation of those meetings is, I believe, in line item 6. Jenna, is that correct?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm also having a little bit of trouble being muted and unmuted. So, yes. So, as Amanda said, it's the project itself coming, like for the lower 6 miles. That's the county is putting that out. However, in response to the stakeholders as a project proponent. However, the items 6 and 14 are that includes several things, but primarily support for the group itself. So in particular, that, as Amanda said, is meeting coordination and planning. It is a lot of background coordination with stakeholders to address concerns and comments. We are facilitating discussions about specific projects, but the projects are coming forward from the project proponents themselves. So this is spun out of the request from the executive committee a few years ago through the strategic visioning process to better support development of regional projects and increasing communication. So that's the main intent here. So what you're seeing in those line items is primarily support of the coordination effort, but it does not include support for example, the alternatives analysis.
Oh, okay. So that was good, but I didn't understand. So just a specific question. Out of the 72,500 and the 85,000, is there money being used for facilitation of the discussion that it was identified, as Amanda referred to it, as the Aliso Creek Watershed Collaboration Group? Is the IRWM group, our agencies helping to fund that?
Yes, that's the same thing. Sorry.
Okay,
Yep. So, yep, that's the stakeholder collaboration group that's talking about projects and so that's line item 6 and 14, which is different between the 2 years. 60,000 proposed for the first year and 75 for the second year.
Okay, I think on the agenda page it says 72,500. So is there any other IRWM item that is in that money, or is that all Aliso Creek?
The whole process is IRWM. We were directed to start with Aliso Creek. I was going to go through this, but we can certainly start with that one. For the first year, it's continuing with Aliso Creek and the intention is to really get the group going so that it can operate on its own. The intention is IRWM, though, is the concept. So really operating to support projects throughout the watershed. One of the key aspects of this is engagement with the resource agencies. A lot of projects are getting stopped through the project review process, completely apart from, it's more the CDFW review or regional board reviews. And so what we're trying to do is get a better understanding across the board for all stakeholders, but in particular also the resource agencies of the projects from the beginning stages, so that we don't have those hurdles later on. That's one of the key key hopes out of this process. And then the second year, and this maintains kind of the current allocation. The second year, and the overall budget stays the same between the 2 years. But the second year cycle, this is a little bit higher because I've also been asked several times to start a similar initiative for the San Juan watershed.
Okay. Okay, so that was a question. And then I'll let Sandra go. And then I have another question or comment on the executive officer's report. But let's let Sandra ask her questions.
Thank
Okay,
you,
Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District. Thank you, Amanda, for taking it out of order, because I wanted to make sure some of the items that you talked about, we have enough budget for, since we're going to be talking about and have been talking about the budget. And one of those items in your staff report, it wasn't the first one on your list, but it was definitely the stormwater capture drivers, impediments, and future visions on that webinar. I have to admit, I missed that due to a conflict, so I'm glad you were involved with that. But the one thing that you have in your staff report, which stuck out to me, was engaging the EPA to address permitting concerns. And it almost made me laugh because, a perfect example is our San Juan Basin project, the phase 1 rubber dams. And we want to capture storm flows, but guess what? We would have to build fish ladders for non-existent fish to accomplish that. And so if that's the type of input they would like, then I will definitely raise my hand to have, to help you, if you have not already, through Don Bunce or Dan Ferns, when it comes to those types of hurdles we have to go through. But just as importantly, when they're talking about these stormwater capture projects, the counties and the cities really need water agency partnerships to be able to own and maintain these facilities, these storm capture facilities, so that we can cost share and be able to capture and treat that storm water to some beneficial use. So it makes it worth our while as a water agency. And so that kind of has to be integrated into the discussion with the EPA as well. It's great to talk about these great projects, but really, maintaining them and owning them is something I'm hoping, and I know you have in your mind, but we want to continue to repeat that to these agencies. That's why water agencies are part of this. So that was one item I wanted to make sure you had enough time to do that in the next fiscal year. The other was, in the time schedule order that was issued, what stuck out to me, the draft bacteria, TMDLs, what stuck out to me in your staff report was, providing the responsible permittees time to, attain those TMDLs until bacteria water quality objectives are attained in the receiving waters. So I think it's important that, from a budget standpoint, that we can truly look at the science that we're using and make sure that the science that we're using doesn't have those unintended consequences that I had mentioned late last year for us wastewater agencies and those trying to recycle water. So I just, it's more of a comment that will help me understand the budget as well. I know you don't have an answer for all of these, but I just want to let you know that if we're going to be talking about the budget, these are some concerns and some issues that I want to make sure you guys, your staff, Amanda, has time to help us with those. And I think with that,
Sandra,
that's, yeah.
Can I just jump in to kind of clarify? So the budget for this group is not addressing these issues. So the activities that we have budgeted for IRWM will not be addressing the TMDL time schedule order or water quality regulations, because again, this group does not, as a collective, as the IRWM group, comment on regulatory items. This group, we bring information on regulatory issues to this group for individual entities to then further and make comment on, but like the work that the stormwater permittees are doing on the time schedule order is completely separate and apart from the budget for this IRWM group. That's being handled solely with the stormwater permittees in our joint funding agreements. So I just want to make that clarification that there is no link between the bacteria time schedule order and the budget that you are considering today. And then somewhat likewise, the stormwater capture drivers and impediments and talking to EPA about permitting issues regarding stormwater and capture use, that's something that I'm offering to facilitate in my role as outside, you know. It's more, again, this is bringing information to this group in this forum. And then in my stormwater hat, I'm happy to work with agencies with this connection that I currently have with Dave to make some connections. So again, that wouldn't impact the budget that you are considering in this meeting, because it is outside. It's not we aren't doing this as the IRWM group. I'm bringing to you things that the stormwater team is doing where there is collaboration or the potential for collaboration with our partners in this forum, but not under that budget.
I understood. I appreciate the clarification. You had them both in the same agenda, so I thought perhaps one was subject to the other. And it's not that I oppose the budget. I want to make sure you have enough in the budget to facilitate what our core mission is. And I will use this opportunity to say thank you for the nearly $6 million that Santa Margarita will be receiving. And so I will end it with a thank you.
All right.
That's fantastic. Are there other questions on the EO report?
Yeah,
I think Betty had a follow-up.
I'm sorry, Betty. We want to come back to you, Betty. Yes.
I will say thank you too to the county staff, because it's a lot of programs to run on a lot of different fronts. And Amanda, thank you, because you answered one of my key questions with respect to your EO report. The items, when you start with the item on the biological objectives issued, as I went through this, I just wanted to be clear that as you go down this list, the biological objectives issues, as I understand, is part of the MS4 program and is being managed through the process set up for the to be paid for the work to be paid for and the decisions to get made by the MS4 permittees. Is that correct, or is that within the county's hat for other county items? Because I don't know that the IRWM group is making any specific decisions about either contracts or work for that, but you're more reporting to us and just letting us know what's going on. Is that right?
Yes. No, the intent of my EO report is to highlight for you things that are going on in our world that, in case you weren't aware of them, we're bringing them to your attention. So the biological objectives is a basin plan amendment that applies to all of the San Diego region and a multitude and has a multitude of impacts on a variety of programs. So it is not solely a stormwater issue. Yes, the county and the stormwater permittees were tracking it and doing that work as our collective stormwater group outside of the IRWM. This is strictly informational to let you know that this is what is going on in our this was a notable action taken by the regional board.
Okay,
That's why it's being brought.
But I guess what I'm trying to get to is who is the deciding entity about the work that's going on there? Is this within the county's purview solely, or is this something that is cooperative between the county and the other MS4 permittees, or is this also involve flood control? I'm just trying to identify who is the key responsible agency making decisions and who's funding it, those two things.
The stormwater agencies did work collaboratively on comments regarding the basin plan amendment for biological objectives.
Okay.
So that would include the county and the flood control district and all of our co-permittee cities.
Okay, that's great. And that's what I would have thought. Because it was in the report for the IRWM, I was just trying to differentiate. Now, the Aliso Creek investigative order, I guess when I look at that, I think of that as being under the umbrella of the county as the owner of the creek and the responsible party for that watershed area. Do I understand that? So this is on the county's kind of watch, and the county is paying for that work. Is that correct?
Again, yes, this is an informational item. But let me note, the county does not own the creek. There are sections that are under county ownership, but the county does not own the creek. We are not, but this investigative order was issued to Orange County Public Works because they are the landowner of the parcel directly under the mouth, and Orange County Parks because the creek outlets at Aliso Beach. And so there were questions regarding issues surrounding how that berm is breached and what activities the county undertakes.
So, but the county is funding the work to respond. Is that correct?
Yes. Again, this is strictly an informational item. This is not an IRWM activity. The response activities for this investigative order were solely funded by the county.
Okay. And I didn't realize that other parties owned portions of the creek, and I'm sure they should be helping to contribute to that work. I mean, it all comes down the whole watershed, but that's just an aside. And then the WQIP is part of the MS4 program. And so yes. The MS4 permittees are making decisions about that work and paying for that.
Yes.
And then I'll just go down the list. Very interested in about the stormwater capture. If there's anything the SACWA can do as a wastewater treatment agency, we do take diverted water that is dry weather flows. If you're in those conversations and want to share a South County perspective on that, be happy to make my staff available to work on that with you. Very interesting that they're looking at that because there's been a lot of environmental objection over time to managing non-point source runoff through capture systems, but they do work well. We've provided presentations. So the TMDL, again, that is its home is in the MS4 program and is paid for out of the MS4 program. That's my general understanding.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so really, when it really comes down to the SACWA budget, we're looking at a total of, if I did the math right, and I might not have, $2.4 million, and that is what helps us be ready to meet the requirements of the state for the facilitation of the grant program that are coming from the state. And then in addition to that, it looks like we've taken on for a regional project the discussions at Aliso Creek.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that will be covered by Jenna's presentation to walk us all through the budget.
Okay, all right, that's great. Thank you. I just wanted to understand that, and I really thank you for those updates on those various items. I just wanted to differentiate between what was under the decision authority or input of this group versus what's being managed by other parties.
Right. Well, and I guess perhaps just to clarify, in general, the executive officer's report is an opportunity for me, and if there are items that will require executive committee decision, those will be agenda items. My executive officer's report is generally a time where I can highlight things that are going on in the general world that overlaps IRWM from an informational perspective. Those are not necessarily items that are under the purview directly of the executive committee IRWM to take action on.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for clarifying. That was very helpful to me.
Is there anyone else that would like to, that has a question or would like to comment regarding the EO report? There's a lot of information there. I think this was so helpful, and this discussion is fantastic. You know, and one thing I would like to comment on, as you know, I'm listening to a lot of these, and thank you, Amanda, for reporting on all of these items that I think are so critical and part of what we're going to be looking at over the next few years. I think it's what occurred to me, well, and my comment that I had been a participant in the Aliso Creek group and the coalition, and it's easy to to say, oh gosh, we have so much to do, but I think when we look back, and particularly over the last 10 years and the last couple of years, and I see around the room all of these agencies and all of the collaboration and all the work that has gone into that as an amazing example. I think part of it came out of the visioning group that 5 years ago, and I think that to see what has transpired and how that has come together, it was just fantastic. And I think we should really pat all of those agencies and all the participants on the back for moving that forward. And what occurred to me, thinking about that and having several conversations with different people that are the IRWM, and all the grant money, and I was talking with Jenna recently, and I think that we're seeing more and more a focus on regional resiliency, and we may not see pure water bonds coming down. I mean, water grants coming down the pike now. I think there might be more holistic in nature, and I think that that could be a very good thing. But I think to me, it kind of begs the question of it may be a time to dust off, and maybe update the visioning perspective that we had 5 years ago. And I know that there are a couple of people still on the committee that participated in that. And I think that it might be really time to form another ad hoc committee and for visioning, and to say, let's take another look. Let's see where we want to go in the future, how we want to focus, and maybe just validate what we already have and where we want to go. So I know this might be a little out of order, but I think that since we only meet every 3 months, and this last year it was once, so it was it makes it a little fragile. But I think that if we could create an ad hoc committee, I know that it's not on the agenda, but I think that if we could suspend the rules and, as an emergency, create or readdress a visioning committee, ad hoc committee, which would only last about 6 months or so, to just sort of refocus as we go into this next 2-year cycle, and say, okay, let's take a look and let's validate where we are and where we might want to go. So I would like to be able to add this to this this idea of a visioning committee today. So, and I see Sandra Jacobs has her hand raised for a question, or Sandra?
Madam Chair, since it is not on the agenda and you mentioned that we only meet every 6 months, then to suspend the rules and add this as an emergency item for consideration on the agenda today, if that was your motion, I would second it.
That is my motion. Thank you for articulating it a lot more clearly than I have. I'm sort of partially thinking out loud, but partially thinking that it really kind of begs for this. So thank you for that second. If there's other discussion, then please raise your hand for discussion.
Yeah. Debbie, I've got a comment on that.
Certainly. Betty?
You know, in my prior life, before I was a GM, I was a counsel to the South Coast Water District.
Yes, I know you were. Thank you. And I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you.
You know, I love you both. However, you can't add an item to the agenda at a meeting unless it's an emergency. And I know it is important that we vision though, but I would say that the executive officer for this group could certainly work within their independent need for information to work with the chair to, if there is a desire to have a, discussion that is not a majority of the members, then
right.
Maybe you're going to get somewhere with that. But I'll buy you both lunch. I owe you both lunch.
Yeah, thank you, Betty.
I was going
to step in and suggest we do have a meeting coming in May. We
Okay.
aren't only meeting every 6 months.
No, every 3 months. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I
Did
don't
I say
think this.
I meant 3.
I agree with Betty. I don't believe that this rises to an emergency.
Okay.
I would really prefer if we could follow the agendizing requirements that we have, and we have definitely heard the desire, and we can bring this back at the May meeting.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. Thank you. And thank you, Betty, for keeping me on the straight and narrow here.
Well, I will withdraw my second.
Okay. I think it's, sometimes my passion runs away, from me. So I think that, so then I will ask, Amanda, I would ask that, that this be placed on the agenda then, for our May meeting. And I think that this, because it's for all the reasons that I had mentioned, and I think that for a lot of the direction that I'm hearing, and I think a lot of our members are hearing, I think that would be time. So with that, I will be quiet for a moment, and we will move to item number 6, which is the budget. And I will turn it over to Jenna, and she will go through this for us.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So, thank you. That was a good preface to this discussion. And we've actually covered a lot of ground already, but especially for the new members, I did want to take a little bit of a step back and cover the approval process that this group follows. So we bring forward as staff every 2 years two annual budgets at the same time. So we approve them on a biennial basis. So that's why you'll see fiscal years 21 through 23. It's broken up, as you've seen in the staff report, between 2 separate fiscal years. Part of the reason for that is so that we have some flexibility, particularly to address any changes in schedule that come from the State Department of Water Resources. They oversee the IRWM program, and they oversee the IRWM grant program in particular. And as any of the members who participate in this group for some time have experienced, DWR schedule changes sometimes multiple times. So that gives us some flexibility when we're needing to budget for the process in support of the grant cycles, to be able to move some funds between those 2 years. But it also allows us, as we've pointed out, to plan a little further out. This group has authority to review and approve the budget, which we do over 2 meetings. So we are bringing it to you in draft form at this meeting. You will consider it as part of the discussion, but then you will take an action at the May meeting. So we will not be taking a direct action to approve this budget today. You will see on the table that the total budget is divided equally amongst the 22 member agencies. I will also show on the table that there's also a column call out for additional support that the county provides. It doesn't capture everything, but it does show on the budget some of those key areas that is not part of what is split amongst the 22 member agencies. And then I did want to make particular note of this. I'm being told I have to advance the slide. Are you seeing FY 21 through 23 proposed work plan?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I did want to make particular note that any portion of the budget not expended in a fiscal year and not reallocated by the executive committee, like we just discussed, if there's an issue with planning between years for a grant program, if that has not occurred, then all of those funds that are not expended are refunded to the member agencies in the next year's invoice. So a good example is this coming year, the budget that is approved in May. When that first year is invoiced, you will be refunded any of the funds not spent in the fiscal year we're currently in, which stretches from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of this year. So having had fewer meetings in that cycle will certainly play into that. You will definitely have a refund on your next invoice. So I did want to call that out. Some years we never go over. Some years we're just a little bit under, or we're pretty close to on with what we intended. Other years things happen. So, we're off on a schedule, COVID, things like that are not foreseen. So then the current budget, which stretches from fiscal years 2019-20 and 2020 and 2021. It's getting to be quite the mouthful with the years now, isn't it? 2019-20, the cost share per member agency was $11,250, and the current year per member agency is $10,795. So I will go through the work plan, but I did want to note that the intention with this proposed budget, given that I know we've gotten some feedback through other processes that this is a tough fiscal period, we are keeping it static. The intention was to keep the budget static. And that's certainly up for discussion as we are talking about some of the other things that the executive committee would like to address. So are you seeing Proposition 1 IRWM grants on this slide?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go through, as we did in the staff report, each of the items that are in the work plan. The item numbers correspond to the table, and the items are numbered 1 through 8 for the first year and 9 onward for the second year. And the reason for the 2 numbers that you see there is because each of these years it's the same item, just for the next year. So for Proposition 1, that first category that you see on both tables is in support of the IRWM grant program. Our facilitation of that is pretty extensive. We go through a significant stakeholder review process and project review process to select projects that we find representative of our region that are then submitted through staff to DWR through a fairly robust grant application. And we also support the project proponents throughout that entire process. And we also then obtain the agreements necessary after we are awarded funds. So this portion of it supports the application process. and anything we need to do to prepare for it. And sometimes that includes updating our IRWM plan. That plan qualifies us for funding. So if DWR updates guidelines and we have to make amendments, that is included in this category. As I said, additional stakeholder support around the IRWM plan is also in this category. Typically, again, that is for project proponents through the process. It also includes, we have always had consultant support for this item, county staff time, and the county also supports this a little bit further that's not cost shared. My intention is to go through all of this and then take questions, if that's okay. But certainly if there's a question that you have, if someone can let me know that a hand is raised, I can always stop. So then the second item, items 2 and 10, the call for projects and plan list management. So we've talked about a couple of these, a couple of plan and lists, and especially for the new members, we are trying to get on the books a new member orientation for you, and I will then go over kind of some of these component pieces for you. But just as a very superficial overview, the IRWM plan includes 2 plan lists, and that's because of state requirements. One is the IRWM project list. The projects that eventually go for funding in our region or want to qualify for funding are required to be listed there. We facilitate that list and we maintain it. We have to make sure that it follows all of the DWR guidelines. Additionally, we maintain the Stormwater Resource Plan project list, which is a component piece to our plan. And that nexus between IRWM and the Stormwater Resource Plan, which is required for any project seeking stormwater funding for any grant program. That nexus came about through Senate Bill 985. So again, that's a state mandate. So this group is responsible for both of those, and the note Sandra made about the $6 million for the stormwater project obtained by Santa Margarita Water District, that is possible because of the plan that that we maintain, the Stormwater Resource Plan. And then again, this includes county staff time and consultants, some consultant support. It's primarily county staff. And then grant administration. This is not cost shared. This is refunded through the grants that we obtain. County staff, we are the primary administrators for this, and we have staff that are focused on administering each of the grants once we obtain them. And like I said, this is county support that is not cost shared, but it certainly is a pivotal part of what we do. Data management. Again, this harkens back to another DWR requirement to maintain a data management system. We make publicly available information associated with our implementation projects. Up to this point, and including Proposition 1, Round 1 that we obtained last year, this group has now been, has awarded funding to 28 projects since its inception. So that is no small feat. All of those are information on those are available on our website that we maintain as the data management system. We continue to improve that so that it is making information accessible to as many people as we can, but also that it is easy to use. So that is county staff time in some consultant services. It's primarily county staff time to maintain that website. Committee support. This is what we're doing right now. County staff support for the executive committee, management committee, stakeholder and ad hoc meetings as are deemed necessary throughout the year. Typically, the $60,000 that we have allocated in a busy year where we hold all of our meetings is typically mostly the executive committee and management committees. If we don't hold as many meetings, obviously, again, that is refunded. The budget that we have is mostly for those support of those 2 primary committees. And then regional project development and stakeholder framework. That's a bit of a mouthful as a title, but as we've talked about and as Betty requested more information for earlier, This really arose from the original strategic visioning, the timing of which, if we want to revisit this, is great because it usually you do for about 5-year strategic vision or strategic plans. One of the key takeaways from that was the need to foster these regional partnerships. We've developed so much over the last 15 years as a group, but when it comes to specific support of projects and putting projects forward that further support the IRWM goals, that yes, may go for IRWM funding, but also may not, but still meet the goals and the intention of our IRWM plan. We set in motion in 2019 a coordination group in the Aliso Creek Watershed. It has been really successful. Once COVID hit, as Amanda said, it kind of put the brakes on a lot of the things that we were doing because we had dedicated to having in-person meetings whenever and wherever possible. And a lot of the communication was really intended for an in-person setting. So we have not done as much over the last few months for that, but we're working to adjust. We've now done the reference guide, which is a comprehensive tool that anyone can use. And we're also hoping can lead to further conversations around the issues that we've been discussing in terms of regulatory alignment, understanding how projects are impacted by multiple layers of regulatory oversight, and if there is widespread dedication to a project happening that meets multiple goals within our region and is really run through a true IRWM process, we're hoping that we can open the door to discussions of how those can be better supported so that they're actually implemented. And this includes county staff and consultant services. And as I have there, and we noted earlier, Aliso Creek, we would continue that process through the first fiscal year, and then in the second startup, hopefully get to starting up a similar group in the San Juan watershed. And then Roundtable of Regions. This is a group that has met for quite some time. There are IRWM representatives for all of the IRWM regions across the entire state. We coordinate with DWR and other state agencies to ensure the success of IRWM as a practice and as a program. That ability to access DWR staff and at times management at the state level has been exceptionally important to moving things forward for both our funding, the funding portion of our program, but also to call attention to a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. And a good example of that was the comment letter that we submitted on the water resilience portfolio. This includes county staff time primarily, and there usually is an annual summit on that we try to get everybody together, and I'm including that. I imagine this year it will be virtual, but those are the key elements of that. Team Arundo has been in place since 2008. And this is one of the elements of the program that I think a lot of us are particularly proud of. Team Arundo includes a manual that this group put together several years ago and ran that through all of the regulatory approvals. And then we sought and now hold all of the permits, environmental regulatory permits, to allow for Arundo removal. So again, for the new folks, Arundo donax is a particularly noxious, invasive plant species that has invaded a lot of our watersheds. It does a lot of damage. It creates a monoculture. It absorbs a lot of water and has some fairly significant impacts on the water column itself. So it has been a major goal of this group to remove Arundo throughout all of our South Orange County watersheds. Holding those permits is one of the key elements of that. So county staff administer the reporting and the fees. One of the things I did want to note is in the table, it says consultant services. I did have an asterisk there. We don't obtain consultant services for this. It's county staff. It's really tricky to put this somewhere. What we really mean is that it's paying for the permits. And my colleague Jennifer Shook and I, and a lot of credit to Jennifer in helping get this newest 1600 permit from CDFW. Just to give you an example, that took over 6 months. And so in doing that, we've had a lot of back and forth with project proponents who are intending to remove a rundo, and that communication back and forth is a key component of this. With the new permit in particular, we have some reporting and fee changes, and so staff support will be really essential to making sure that we can meet those requirements as held by those permits. So these tables then summarize the funding that I've proposed allocating to each of those categories. As I said, that first category, grant submittals, IRWM plan updates, that's a broad category that is around supporting the IRWM plan itself and the grant portion of our process. In the first year, I'm anticipating a little bit more on the grant cycle. As of right now, DWR is anticipating getting the draft PSP, which is kind of that first piece to say we're going to start soliciting for projects in August. They're anticipating that their guidance will be final at like very end of this year. We'll see if that holds. If it does hold, then I would anticipate us doing a call for projects near the end of this year, maybe going into the beginning of next year, and those are calendar years. So a good chunk of, there's more allocated for this, for items 1 and 2 in the first year than there is in the second year, because I anticipate that schedule. And then for grant administration, like I said, that stays fairly static over time, but is not funded through the member agencies. Data management, similarly, is the same between both years, and that's county staff time for the most part. We do have a little in there in case there's some assistance from consultants that would be helpful for, that's typically related to item number 1. And then committee support, we've talked about that. And regional project development stakeholder framework, this was the question Betty asked earlier. There's a little bit more allocated in the second year for that San Juan group. Roundtable of Regions is the same each year. It's a small amount just to support that engagement. And then the Team Arundo program is $7,500 per year. And again, it's under consultant services, but really that's the re-uppance of all the permitting. And this is the second year. So this is where those differences are. In particular, item number 9, it's a little bit lower. Item number 10, also a little bit lower. Data management committee support, those are all the same. Regional project is a little bit higher, again, for trying to cover a little bit more in the second year. And Roundtable of Regions and Arundo are the same. Are there any questions?
Okay. Great job. And I do see some hands are raised. Betty, I need to start. Betty, yep.
I'll defer to Sandra to go ahead, and then I'll follow on.
Okay, Sandra, go for it.
Thank you. Do you hear the same echo that you don't hear me echoing, do you? Thank you so much, Jenna. That was very thorough, and I appreciate that. If we're going to budget for a San Juan Watershed group, it's one thing, but in 22-23, keep in mind that we have the San Juan Basin Authority and that organization that can easily facilitate a lot of the things that's going on in the Aliso group. And before we jump in and commit ourselves to a group per se for San Juan Watershed, I'd like to see how the Aliso group is finalized and what comes out of that. and whether or not we even need to create a San Juan group. I don't think it's something that we particularly asked for. So I'm not asking you to take that part out of the budget, but it certainly would save our costs if we allowed the working part of the San Juan Basin Authority to help you with the group, with the San Juan Watershed group. And that's $57,000 or $75,000 that, is a nice chunk of change that we could save. So I'm not sure who asked for the San Juan group and Watershed group, but I just want to make you aware when we get to that point in 22-23 that I think it's overkill for what we have in the basin already. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Betty, you want to follow up on that now?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank the staff because the grant program facilitation over the years, staying up with DWR and its requirements, the team Arendo, gold star. I mean, fantastic that our region has been able to have those programs. I guess one question, where we have the committee support on items 6 and 13, I think Deb's conversation about a revisioning process, I really support that. And I want to make sure that that we have that the 6 ad hoc that's listed there, we have enough money to support that visioning work to go ahead. So I guess that would be, I have some other comments, but I guess that would be a question for Jenna. Is that, would that allow for us to have enough money there? Or do we need to put a little bit more in for that visioning work? So
Jenna?
That's a question for Jenna. Okay, well, I don't. I guess
it's fine. It's sorry. It keeps muting me too. And I don't know why it keeps muting me.
I was being patient. Go ahead, Jenna.
So, yes, I'll address Betty's question first. The committee support element, we, as I mentioned before, the 6 ad hoc, the way that this has been, and it's been structured this way for a long time, it's intended to be kind of a small scale thing that is, might spin off of any specific item that comes out of the executive committee. It's not, based on what we did the first time with 2015-16, I don't think that it would cover, if we held all of our other meetings, I don't think it would be quite enough to do the full strategic visioning we did in 2015-16. It would not take a whole lot more though. In looking at kind of what we did last time, and saying some hours for myself and Andy, for example, in support of that, I would say, and this is just total ballpark based on the FTE calculations that we use, that it would be another 5,000, but I wouldn't say any more than that. And really that's because the last time we held monthly meetings of that group, and we provided a lot of background information, and it was fantastic. I think the engagement around that was really helpful and pivotal in terms of our planning that we've then grown from since. But that's the structure I'm kind of basing that on.
Well, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Betty. I didn't want to interrupt, but just to follow up, just to get a little bit of a clarification.
Yeah.
I think that back 5 years ago, we were kind of starting from ground zero. Mm-hmm. I'm not proposing that we start from ground zero, certainly to take, what was created and then to basically tweak it. So it's not, sort of that full blown with the research, and all of that effort necessarily. So would you have the same comment in that regard?
Well, what I would say is, I think one consideration could be, we would know better once we got into it, because a lot of it was driven at the time by the questions that were arising from the group. So it's a little hard to tell without being in it. So one thing we could do is move forward with as it is right now and be really diligent of tracking how much is going in to say this is how much we're supporting it as we go through. And if we think that we might not have enough budget in that category, we can make a decision then about how best to support it going forward. Midway, we don't usually add, but what that means is we could potentially find a cost saving somewhere else to move funds around if it was necessary. Or we might not need other meetings of the year, and that would free up some space. So it's just hard to know before then. And the assumption is we need every other meeting going in, but that's not always the case.
I would, so I would suggest, well, I have a couple more comments. I completely agree with Sandra regarding the comment made regarding doing a San Juan Creek group similar to the Aliso Creek group. I would very much like to see the work of the facilitator on Aliso Creek concluded and a report prepared that we can, since our group has supported that work, that we see a report back and what tangible items come out of it. And again, I mean, I totally agree. San Juan Creek is already so well looked over by the water rights group. That is an open and public meeting group. SACWA participates in that and goes to the San Juan Basin Authority meetings. So I just don't see the same kinds of baseline unaddressed issues that are existing in the Aliso watershed. So I'd like to see the report first before we put money in the budget, and I'd like to take that and sideline it for now. We do have to be a little bit cautious that we're in the COVID world, and all of our communities are, we have people hurting and without jobs. We don't, we really want to be budget conscious. That would give us an opportunity to just wait till next year to look at that and finish the work in the coming year that's here for the Aliso. I do support getting that work completed. And then I would suggest, if we're gonna carve out the funding for another group next year, that maybe we go ahead and put another $4,000 into the committee support so that we can make sure we have the money for the visioning and we're not cut short or unable to do the process for that. So those would be my suggestions. And I don't know if we're making motions. If we're making motions, I'll state that as a motion.
I would like to clarify one thing on the Aliso group. So a couple things actually. The first thing for the San Juan group, when we originally started this effort, it was the request of the full stakeholdership that was participating in that process that there needed to be a forum of some form supportive of a watershed approach. And that really comes down to local level, the folks who are particularly engaged in those issues associated with the watershed, and that needed to be supported. It wasn't the intention that it was going to result in a report that finalized it, because it's a continuation of coordination. What we were planning to do, though, is over time taper off the support from a facilitation standpoint, in the hopes that that coordination and those partnerships could be maintained without that infusion of support. But the hope is that continues and that projects are supported over years, and not so much that this was starting a specific process that ends with a specific project. When we did the initial look, there were 40 projects that were linked throughout the watershed in terms of meeting the desired outcomes that everyone agreed upon. So it was during that process also that I was asked by several people, when are you going to do this for San Juan? And it wasn't to overwrite what was happening. I think it was more specifically to talk about projects that provide multiple benefits. It's not just looking at the basin, it's looking at surface water quality, it's looking at natural resources. in the kind of looking at that holistically, if there's a desire to hold off on San Juan, that's certainly up to the will of the group. But I did want to clarify that the intention over time is to reduce the amount of effort it takes for us to support it, that it needs to start living on its own in Aliso, but not that it stops.
Well, I guess in response to that, if this facilitator, because this is a project that started in a prior year, if I'm right about that, you know, I don't think it's asking too much to ask the facilitator to put together, you know, kind of a summary of things accomplished, or where, I understand it's supposed to go on, but when the facilitator departs, they should sort of be reporting to us, you know, what the good spot is that they are at, so that we know how we spend our money. I mean, if I'm hiring a consultant, I want to know, okay, how did I spend my money? You know, because my board of directors is going to ask me that, right? They're going to want to know. So I suggest that we talk to the facilitator and say, hey, you know, we've had you on board a couple years, and you know, when you're wrapping up, whenever that moment in time is, you know, in the next year, because that's funded to get completed in the next year, you know, let's get a you know, a report out that says, hey, we reached this good moment in time, and, you know, we hope you go forward and prosper into the future, if that's the idea, which sounds like what you're saying. And it's great to have that group together and working. And Jenna, I know from working with you on putting projects in how much help you provide to anybody who's got even the backbone of a decent idea. So you're great at that. And so I don't have any, you know, once folks have been through the group and they understand the process, they should be in a position to, if they want to put projects through this process, IRWM grant funding, to participate with the minimal things that are needed from an applicant to get something forward. And again, I think that the number of agencies, ourselves at SACWA, the San Juan Basin Authority, the cities, the local cities who are participating in the MS4 program along the San Juan Creek watershed, there's so many irons in the fire already. I think that decision should wait until the next budget year. That's just my opinion.
And before we continue, one other point of clarification. We talked very briefly about the reference guide. I did want to circle back with that really quick. We have composed a comprehensive view of the watershed that summarizes the accomplishments of that group to date and what we know of the status of the watershed. It also looks at the potential options that could be explored for streamlined permitting for projects that meet those desired outcomes. So the group has put in an exceptional amount of work that is summarized by that reference guide. And I did want to highlight that was quite an undertaking to summarize that. And that, I think, is a good compilation and representation of the amount of effort that has gone into the process overall. And I agree that the intention is to kind of reduce, especially the consultant support that goes into support of the Aliso group, and hope that the participants in the watershed can kind of take ownership of that group. I do think it's important that there is a role for, at least a small role for this group in terms of making sure that this continues to meet the intent and spirit of IRWM. But I definitely hear what you're saying about the San Juan watershed. But I just want to clarify, the intention is not to start a process and then not continue to support it over time.
Thank you. Thank you both. And I think, you know, listening to you, I mean, it's true. I mean, certainly, I think we all know that there's been so much work done by the San Juan Basin Authority and that group. And I agree. I don't know. I think possibly just because of the success of the Aliso Creek group and what has come out with that, and some of the great collaborative, results that have occurred. I think that's why there's probably, that there was a question there, but I agree. And just a reminder, you know, we're not approving the budget today. We're basically this is a good, healthy discussion. Time is kind of, you know, running away from us a little bit. So what I would ask is that, you know, I think that since there has certainly been some pushback and some, you know, there are some big question marks regarding moving ahead with the San Juan. I think that I would like everyone to take a look at this budget. If you have, you know, any additional questions or comments, you know, get that into to staff. But I would think that we probably have enough money, particularly as we move forward. And if we do move forward with the ad hoc and the visioning, then the type of focus might change slightly, but I think that the funding would be there. That's sort of my gut feeling there. And I agree, being for so many years in the consulting world, you know, you want to kind of see that end and that deliverable. And I think that the reference guide is a great deliverable on one hand, but I have seen, you know, quite a bit of pushback at the group as far as disconnecting and kind of going on their own. So I think that needs some discussion by the group, and I think that and to see exactly how and why and where that stopping point and where that support changes and how it continues needs to be addressed certainly this year. So I think with that, if there are any other comments or questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move on to the next.
If I could
Yes.
just clarify, Betty, I think I just want to make sure I'm clear when I bring this back in May. Am I making an adjustment for the second year to reduce item 14 and put some of that in item 13?
Well, that was what I was suggesting, not that, you know, that we get past the kind of the whatever state the Aliso group is in with and I really appreciate that there has been, and I know you're right, it is a ton of work to put that information together for Aliso, but that we have an opportunity to review it as in this group and then consider what the facilitator has to say in whatever form he's going to say it in or she's going to say it in. And then we give that thought in the next budget year as to whether we think that style type of effort is needed or appropriate for San Juan Creek for those of us who are very involved already in the San Juan watershed in multiple ways. That would be useful because we want to use our dollars for really to pay for the kinds of things that really are going to help those of us who put in for regional projects, because we're the ones, our agencies are the ones who have to be the proponents of regional projects. So for us to know that that's helpful to us or necessary to us. And so that's just my pitch on it. Of course, it's up to the whole group, and I appreciate Deb's comments. You know, the many can sort of sit there and sort of we can decide, but I would just ask process-wise that we, before we just automatically say, oh, well, we put it in the budget, so we're going to do it. You know, I would not be happy about that.
And Betty, you know, I mean, that's I guess I was actually proposing that placeholder, that money be moved from exactly what you were saying, or proposing that some of that funding in item number 6, you know, or I guess the second year certainly, but 6, and then the second year also be moved more toward the ad hoc visioning. And then I think that then it's not a done deal that the potential project would be San Juan. It might be something else, you know. So that's kind of what I was proposing, that the overall budget, I don't necessarily feel that this great need that we have to add an additional 5,000 or 10,000, that I think that we should be able to move it comfortably now and then decide more specifically on what the focus would be in the second year after we have a definitive and a comfortable feeling regarding Aliso Creek.
Yeah, I
So,
would support that. I think that's a great idea.
okay.
Okay.
Jenna, do you have enough direction then?
Yes, what I believe we're saying is items 6 in the first year and item 14 in the second year, that some of those funds be shifted for. Now, for the first year, we would do visioning most likely in the next fiscal year. So if we wanted to shift funds from item 14, did you still want to have that go into general committee support, or did you want to see it moved elsewhere so that it's available should there be a different more direction, or did you want an overall reduction in the budget?
I thought we weren't approving this. I thought, I guess
You're not. You're
Yeah.
not. But
Okay.
I have to, when I come back with this at the next meeting, you're making a decision on what is presented then. So I do want to make sure I've captured the changes as I present it the next time.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I saw Sandra's hand go up. I didn't want to speak over you, Sandra. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
Overall, hi, Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District. Overall, the budget is really, it's going up from last year, but it's really going back up to what it was in the 2 prior fiscal years ago. So I did not have a problem with the overall total budget. How we maneuver things and shake things out as to whether or not we need certain groups, I think we can, Jenna can adjust a few things and propose them back to you, Madam Chair, and make sure that you're comfortable with it. But overall, budget-wise, at $11,250 per agency, I'm fine with that. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
And
thank you.
Rick also has his hand up.
Yes. Okay, Rick, I didn't see you. Sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
Hey, thank you very much. Really robust conversation. Having attended these meetings now for the better part of almost 6 years, I just want to put a little bit of context into my recollection when this board put together their strategic visioning. I think we decided to bite off what we could chew with regard to the different watersheds. And I remember comments being made that the San Juan watershed was fairly well taken care of with the San Juan Basin Authority, and that it made a lot of sense for us to focus on Aliso. So if the collective group thinks that now is the time to move towards including San Juan, I think it would be prudent for the discussion to be with the San Juan Basin Authority and just make sure that all the bases are covered, and we kind of make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes or duplicating efforts. So it's just a comment on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to raise their hand? Sorry, I missed that.
I think we have a representative from our San Juan Basin Authority.
I think we do as well. Yes.
Are we thinking Norris is?
Is Norris
representing
on
today?
He couldn't.
Who's
Oh.
here?
Oh.
No worries. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Deb,
Okay.
I would support what Sandra said about you finishing this up with the staff, and I think the ideas that you expressed I support, so I'll just say that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Great discussion. I know we're already at 4:20. So
Do we want, Chair Neve, do we want to touch base with Rebecca and see if she feels she has time to go through her presentation? I know it's pretty
yes,
tight.
I think that would be that would be appropriate if we could do that, please. And Rebecca, I went through your slides and I just wanted to add, I think thank you so much for joining us today. Because we haven't met in, a couple of meetings, it was so robust, and with the budget and new individuals, I apologize that the time has just run away from us, but if you'd like to speak, Rebecca?
Yeah, no worries. I greatly enjoy the discussion actually, and I'm an original native of Southern California, so I appreciate all the work that you guys do and keeping all the water, all these jobs that everybody does to keep all of our water clean. So I actually really enjoyed it. I can do a quick 5 to 7 minute speed run through of this, and if you guys have questions, I'd rather do questions. I also presented this to the board in January and to the state board in January, and that was recorded. So if you want to go back through that, you're welcome to. But I did reuse slides just because I thought I did a really great job with them. So we have that opportunity.
Rebecca, I think I would absolutely love to grant you that 5 to 7 minute window where, since we've already covered the EL report, I think we could certainly do that. So if you'd like to proceed, I'm sorry for the rush, but go for it. And we will, if we're 5 or 10 minutes late, then I will certainly indulge you.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. With that, then Jenna, maybe if you want to go to the next slide. Just a heads up here. I'm Rebecca Greenwood. I work for the State Water Resources Control Board in the Recycled Water and Desalination Unit. We are headquartered in Sacramento, and I did just want to put it out there that I love talking to people. So if you guys have questions or comments or anything on any of these reports, any of the visualizations or the data itself, I'd be happy to talk to you, but we are currently teleworking. And so the best way to reach me is via email. And if the discussion warrants an actual meeting, I can definitely set up a Teams meeting and we can go through whatever is needed. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So next slide.
Thank you.
In the 10-second version of this, I'm going to hope you all maybe know that we have a statewide recycled water policy that was issued by the State Water Board. And the last time we updated that was in 2018. And just to hit the main points in this slide, we did have 3 goals in the recycled water policy: to increase the volume of recycled water use, to increase the use of recycled water in areas where groundwaters are in a state of overdraft, and the last narrative goal was to reuse as many of the dry weather discharges to enclosed bays, estuaries, coastal lagoons, and ocean waters as feasible. And I just really want to highlight that as feasible. As I get into some of the numbers, we were very interested in seeing where a lot of our volumes went. So this was a really big one, but I'll kind of touch back on these as I go through these slides. Next slide. Excellent. So the quick and dirty of this is that the State Water Board Executive Director issued a 13267 investigative monitoring report to update the monitoring and reporting requirements of 756 wastewater treatment plants and recycled water producers. This is really big since the policy had never had any of these electronic reporting requirements before. And we wanted to try to get as many permits updated in one swoop as possible. So we updated that through those, and those were issued early 2019, and our intent was the first year of reporting to be conducted for the 2019 calendar year to be reported by April 30th of 2020. And these monitoring and reporting requirements, which were laid out in the policy, include us asking for influent volumes, which is what's coming into the treatment plant, be it that, again, that wastewater treatment plant or recycled water producer. Production, what level is that water treated to, and then ultimately where is that water going? Is it being discharged as an effluent, or is it being treated to a pretty high standard and used for recycled water use? And just to highlight here is that we are considering recycled water use in this sense to be consistent with California Code of Regulation Title 22, so that approved treatment level and approved beneficial use. Next slide. Awesome. So with this, we issued all of those really great updates to monitoring and reporting programs, and we put together kind of a little task force to make sure that we could answer any questions that were coming in from all of these wastewater entities or recycled water producers. And so just as a highlight, just real high highlight here is that we have a lot of information on our website available to dischargers about the report itself, why we're doing it, and then a recorded training webinar that kind of walks through what the questions are in the report. And then if, again, you have any questions, we created a recycled water help desk, which can be reached at recycledwater@waterboards.com. Next slide. So with that, I'll tell you that with our first annual report, we ended up with a 93% compliance rate, which we were very happy for, especially with the, pandemic kind of going on. We were a little worried that we were going to have some problems, and the state board did issue a 60-day extension on the first deadline. So everybody had until June 30th, 2020 to do some of this reporting, but we were very pleased with a 93% compliance rate for the first year. So all of the numbers that I'm going to be presenting in this slideshow will be based off of the date that's shown on this slide and all of the reports that were submitted at that point. Next slide. I'm going to skip this slide and just tell you that essentially we do have some numbers from previous years, but when you're looking to look at that data, is that you're not going to be able to compare them apples to apples. They're going to be apples and oranges. So if you have questions about that, we can make sure that we can talk about that in further discussion. So next slide. All right, so if I only got to one slide in this whole presentation, this would be the one that I would want to show you, is that out of all of this data that we asked for, it was really big, and California had never had any centralized electronic data location for all of this information, but we did end up having 3.7 million acre feet per year submitted to us for what was coming into these treatment plants. And then the effluent being discharged, which again may be for a beneficial use, but is not considered that recycled water, was 2.7 million acre feet per year. And then rounding out the right side is the recycled water use, which is used in compliance with that Title 22, as I mentioned before, for 686,000 acre feet per year. I know the numbers on the slide don't look like they add up, and we kind of account for that with some in-plant use, pond storage, loss of biosolids, water loss in general. But we really did try to ensure that we weren't double counting with people handing over water from one place to another and accounting for all of that different type of variability within flows. So the next slide. And just a really general breakdown of, in the report, we asked people to classify themselves if they are treating recycled water or not. So there are 428 plants that are not currently capable of producing that Title 22 water. 265 are receiving a raw wastewater, treating it to a standard and producing some recycled water. And then the final category on the bottom is recycled water producers, which are receiving a secondary effluent stream, so not taking in that raw effluent wastewater. And here's how they're spread out in California. Next slide. I'm just going to tell you that as a part of this survey, we do record treatment levels, but I'm not going to talk much further besides that, so just to save some time. Next slide. This is the big one that I wanted to point out, is that of that 2.7 million effluent number that I mentioned, we have nearly 1.8 million acre feet being discharged to ocean waters, enclosed bays, estuaries, and coastal lagoons. And as I mentioned, it kind of ties back to that goal that I said on the first slide, that we would like to start to evaluate why this water is going to the ocean, and if we can do anything feasibly to reuse some of this water in the future. So that will come out from a whole lot of different studies. I'm sure in evaluating this number. But the other one is inland surface waters, and those are, you know, a lot of beneficial use. We have some that goes to inland surface waters that require a minimum in-stream flow, and then the next categories are a little bit smaller, but the only other one there is land, which we might categorize as a beneficial use, but is not, again, considered that Title 22 recycled water. Next slide. Okay, this one looks like it got shrunk down, but this essentially just breaks down the recycled water use by categories. So the recycled water use number that I mentioned was at 686,000 acre feet per year. What I really want to highlight is that potable reuse slide on the left, those two pieces of the pie for groundwater recharge and seawater intrusion barrier are increasing. Which is really great. And a lot of those projects, again, as we come on in the next 10 years, hopefully trying to increase recycled water, with the development of direct potable regulations, that we'll start to see more increase in this. So that's just a highlight on this slide. Next. Okay, this is just big overview slide. As I mentioned before, apples and oranges, we do have some data from prior years, but when you start to compare them, they're not exactly the same. And what we want to emphasize here is that looking forward, we're going to have this data electronic, annual. It's going to be the same. We're going to have the same structure. So all of our data will be able to compare year to year to year. So we'll be able to make more informed decisions about what's going on with the policy. Next slide. This one's just a breakdown of the recycled water use by regional board. Again, shout out to Region 8, so Santa Ana Region, Region 9, and Region 4 for having a large portion of those potable uses. Next slide. So as I mentioned in that first slide, we had that increase to 2.5 million acre feet per year by 2030, and clearly we're not quite on track to meet that. So, you know, evaluating what we're going to be doing moving forward and seeing what increases we do get over the next few years, and updating the recycled water policy and other permits as necessary to help meet maybe a more practical goal, or something that, you know, is more representative of how water is used in California. Next slide. Moving forward, as we have our data set, I think is linked in this agenda. You can access any of this data that I just kind of presented on the fly here to check out any of those numbers that you want. We're going to be continuing outreach as the 2020 report will now be due coming up April 30th, 2021. So we're doing outreach for all of that, and trying to make sure that we get a hold of everybody. So if you are one of these people that I'm sure I have talked to before, if you have any questions before your report's due, I am available. Next slide. And yeah, so I mean, take home message here is that, you know, we really are trying to promote consistent annual, open, centralized data, being transparent, being able to evaluate some of those trends in the water use that we're seeing so far, and inform not just our recycled water policy program, but inform multiple programs across the board and across the state to help better reuse our water. And we're actively involved, I heard you guys mention it before, with the EPA in the National Water Reuse Action Plan, and trying to make sure that we're staying involved in that, and setting forward some of the baselines, you know, that are going to be impactful across the nation. So California, you know, is always leading the way in a lot of cases for some of these things. So it's really exciting. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Wow, you are a lady to your word.
I tried.
Take a breath and present. Wow. Rebecca, fantastic. I truly wish that we had had more time. Is there anyone, I do want to give anyone the benefit to, if there's a pressing question, to raise their hand and certainly ask Rebecca questions. If not, Rebecca, thank you so very much, and thank you for making yourself available. I'm sure that you have spoken to many of us, and I think that thank you for the offer to reach out and talk to you individually on very specific things. And I do see Dave Wheeler is a guest, and he would like to ask you a question. Dave?
I'll make it a real quick one. I noticed the one chart had the injected water. Actually, what is that? Is that bad stuff or good stuff or in between?
In the effluent one?
No, it was the chart that had a bar chart.
Yeah, so in the effluent discharge one, there's an underground injection category, and that's specifically defined in our reporting scheme, but it's water that's not treated to the Title 22. It's mostly used out in, I believe, the Central Valley, I think is where those numbers came from, just thinking about it off the top of my head. But it's not intended for recharge or anything of that manner.
Is it bad stuff? I mean, chemicals and the
It's
fields
not
or whatever?
necessary. Yeah, it's not necessarily chemicals. It's probably treated to usually like a secondary standard. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what that was off the top of my head, but it's not necessarily bad stuff. It's still treated wastewater.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Betty, and then Rick.
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you, Rebecca. Our staff had a chance to see you give this presentation at the State Water Board, and as a producer of recycled water, which we deliver to our retail agencies to use, we just are super excited about anything and everything the State Board can do to assist the water reuse group and the recycled water community to make recycling projects possible. It is an amazing source of very reasonably priced water. So that's my pitch. Thank you, though.
Definitely agree. Thank you, Betty.
I'll second that, Betty. Rick, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you very much. Great presentation, very fascinating. And as you're fully aware of, and this entire group is that, South Orange County has been on the forefront of water reuse and recycling. My one question comes from the one chart which showed where the different water ends up. So with ocean outfalls being the vast majority. And I'm just curious as to, there was some chatter in Sacramento about trying to really eliminate ocean discharges from a legislative point of view, and just knowing functionally how our system works down here, it would be very much a challenge for agencies and groups of agencies to eliminate ocean outfall. So I'm just curious as to what your perspective is on what percentage of that 1.7 million would kind of shrink down over, say, the decades, and if there's a goal to getting to a lower number and not eliminating that number entirely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key part in that is kind of poking back to our goal that's in the policy is that as feasible. We're not gonna, I don't think there would ever be really a mandate to be like zero discharge to anything. And I think that's kind of the way that the bill was worded that you're referencing. And I don't think it went much further than just kind of being exactly what it was. But I think just speaking from just kind of a higher standpoint, we do have a grant that's being funded from the State Water Board for the Water Research Foundation to talk about some of the feasibility in increasing recycled water. And that report's not due out until I think July of 2022. But I think that would be something that's evaluated within that portion. I think a lot of people knew that we had a lot of water going to the ocean beforehand. We just didn't know the actual amount. I don't know if looking at it as a percentage base is best. I think once we start to kind of talk to a lot of the agencies and start to evaluate what really is feasible, I don't think it would be totally acceptable to just be like a ban on going to the ocean. So I think there's a lot of time to have these conversations, to have these talks, and to stay involved and influencing what happens in the next policies. And yeah, I don't want to ever say that there would just be a straight ban on discharge to the ocean.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and can I just jump in real quick for some of our city members who may not fully understand the inner workings of a wastewater treatment plant? A lot of what is discharged to the ocean is brine. So we're not necessarily, it's not, the discharge to the ocean still needs to continue, because what happens in the wastewater treatment plant as well as in a recycled water plant is the contaminants are removed and contained, and then those have to be discharged. So things like salts, things like bacteria, things that are taken out of the water so it can be reused, then that waste stream does need to be discharged. So I don't ever envision our wastewater systems going to a point of zero discharge, because we really are, we're able to move contaminants around. We're not able to make contaminants disappear completely.
So I would just thank you, Amanda, for that clarification, but just also, it's not like Finding Nemo where the fish goes down the drain and straight out to the ocean. He has to go through a wastewater treatment plant that is operated in accordance with state and federal law. And I'm, unlike Disney, he probably never would have made it to the ocean. Just clarifying that we treat water, we treat it to state and federal standards. And as Amanda's saying, salts and residual materials, but it is a biological treatment process that does fully, to log levels, remove viruses and bacteria. And so just to kind of add on.
Yes. All of this water, since we didn't go through all this is all treated wastewater that's being put out to these different locations. So yeah, we're not just applying straight waste to land. No.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. And like I said, sorry to rush you through. This has been fantastic and very informative, and I'm sure that you will probably have several follow-up calls. So with that, is there any one of our committee members that have a pressing issue or comment that they would like to share before we adjourn? Please raise your hand. And I see no one, but I would just like to say, thank you to everyone. And I know we had a little technical difficulties today. Hopefully very soon we will all be back together again in person, I'm hoping, but I am thrilled that we at least have our scheduled meetings back on track, and it won't be quite so hair on fire next time. So thank you, and our next meeting will be May 6th. Until then, thank you so much, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you guys. Thanks everyone for your patience.
Let us know when you want to convene the nominating committee. And
yes, I will. I will reach out to you guys. Yes, I'll reach out to you guys. I think let's try to do that sooner rather than later. So I will pull together an email to the three of you, and we will get together. Okay.
Good to see you, Rick. You got a lot of facial hair going on there. Is it time to shave yet?
Oh, I like your fingernails, Sandra. Look at you.
Oh.
Springtime.
Water.
Right. Okay.
Right. Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.